Good afternoon. If you could please be encouraged and feel comfortable to move closer to the stage, that would be really awesome because we hope to have some meaningful conversation towards the end of this presentation. So come on down a little bit more. Please, come on in. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you for being brave. There's a whole 2 rows available in the front. So if you are one of my students, I'm thinking maybe you might be a little closer. Or if you're not, you can also come closer. I think we'll get started. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for Art Without Limits. My name is Amber Emery Mayer. I'm a professor of dance here at Kent State University, and I'm very pleased to introduce our next keynote speaker. This is Ananya Chatterjea, and I'd like to share with you a little bit of information about her before she speaks to us. Her work as a choreographer, dancer, and thinker brings together contemporary dance, social justice choreography, and a commitment to healing justice. She created Yorcha, Ananya Dance Theater's signature movement vocabulary, and was the primary architect of the Shangram, the company's justice and community-oriented choreographic methodology. Chatterjea is a 2011 Guggenheim Choreography Fellow, a 2012 and 2021 McKnight Choreography Fellow, a 2016 Joyce Award recipient, a 2018 UBW Choreographic Center Fellow, a 2019 Dance USA Artist Fellow, and recipient of the 2021 A.P. Anderson Award. Ananya Dance Theater has earned a reputation for engaging performances, intellectual and artistic rigor, and an uncompromising commitment to social justice. Its BIPOC woman and femme dance artists are cultural activists who believe in the transformative power of dance. In dancing stories where the lives and dreams of women from the global majority occupy the center, they challenge the landscape of mainstream culture, build understanding about the arts and social justice, and empower artistic voices. Please help me welcome Ananya Chatterjea.
Thank you, Amber. Thank you for this invitation. Friends, dance is a practice where you got to show up and be seen. Show up in the front seats. Come on now, I met some of you. I'm not weird and I don't bite. Please come on so that we can have a conversation with each other. Let's build relationship. Thank you for being in the front row. Come on. Okay, thank you so much for this work of active presencing. And don't be afraid to ask questions either. And when if you have thoughts, just hold them and we'll have a conversation at the end, yeah? All right, so what does social justice choreography and the embodied labor of dance have to do with entrepreneurship? What is social justice choreography anyway? Let's talk a little bit about it and we will see where we meet about that. So in popular conception, the notion of entrepreneurship is generally or often associated with business models and with initiatives that are organized as for-profit entities. Yet so many of the primary characteristics associated with entrepreneurship, innovation, leadership, vision, and the willingness to take thoughtful risks seem to describe the many brilliant artists who have pushed through the boundaries of convention in dance and have shifted the field. These are people who have reconfigured the way we have come to think about dance and have made enduring changes for the field in which we work, yeah? So let me offer an example. I often think about the choreographer and dance artist Alice Shepherd, one of the leading advocates of disability dance and access. So here is Alice with her collaborator, Laurel Lawson, in one of their recent pieces, Wired. In a powerful opinion piece published in the New York Times in February 2019, entitled, "I Dance Because I Can," Shepherd writes powerfully about how she fell in love with dance. She dismantled some of the myths that limit our understanding of disabled artists and the tremendous richness they bring to this shared field of ours. She breaks down myths that hold dance hostage in a hierarchy-ridden framework. Shepherd also invites us to think differently about access, as she talks about the innovations she has been spearheading. I quote from her article, "Disability culture and aesthetics are bound up with access, but not in the sense elucidated in the law. We are accustomed to thinking about accessibility as being about an accommodation that bridges the gap between the disabled and non-disabled worlds. But activists," and she's also talking about her work, "emphasize access as a process and a way of creating connection between and among disabled people, a way of knowing and being in the world." And she goes on to talk about the production, Wired, which she just premiered. She says, "Members of the disabled community have been involved in all aspects of the show, from pre-show communications and training to front-of-house staffing to an upcoming seminar. People have flown in from all across the country to share in this event. The audience feels like family, and we have done our best to welcome them as opposed to accommodate them." The language used to describe accessibility in the law. We did not get it all right, I know that, but access is also about the commitment to learn and to be with each other differently. Next time, we will learn more. Being a contemporary and a friend of Shepherd's and her co-choreographer Laurel Lawson, and studying their work closely has shifted completely the way I have come to define dance and to understand how it circulates in our lives. And this is true for the entire field. Shepherd's work has radically reframed the way we think about dance and engagement. Nowadays, it's normal, best practice, and pretty automatic to think about theater venues with access ramps, with budget for ASL choreographers, especially when we invite dialogues with audiences after performances. We search for experts who can provide audio descriptions for our performances. We think about how the best website design can serve those with low vision, about alt text descriptions for images, about captions for recorded conversations. These become signals that we care about and welcome the disabled community to our work, that we consider them valuable audiences and community members. Of course, all of this needs significant resources and has been made possible by high-level innovation. But is that also because we began by conceptualizing dance as an exclusive domain of superability and by associating technical prowess and artistic excellence only with a narrow set of parameters? So now we have to go back and do the work of dismantling that in order to have a broader vision of what dance can actually do for us. And now we have to reimagine how we invite in different communities to our work. Shepard's visionary work is brilliantly entrepreneurial, calling for cutting-edge technological and engineering solutions. So I'm going to show you this ramp. This ramp that she uses for her work in Descent is not, in fact, ADA compliant. But she's worked with engineering students to create this ramp, and they have some daring moments. This is a piece in which neither Alice nor Laurel ever are vertical on their feet, but they are in their chairs the whole time, and they're hanging off the edges and doing some brilliant, brilliant dancing. Here is the stage. You see the curving stage, that ramp. It's like it takes hours to actually put it together, built by many engineering students. It comes in pieces, you put it together. And the lighting is done by this amazing disabled artist, lighting designer, Michael Magg, who understands the world they're trying to conjure. To me, this is one of the highest levels of entrepreneurship, dismantling hierarchical thinking and innovating solutions. Now, I want to make an important distinction between the vital need for entrepreneurship and a certain kind of business-minded approach to dance, which might assess value by quantifying the profit generated. And this will take us back to how we understand the function of dance, understanding how dance circulates in our lives today. So dance is primarily a live experience, and it is the ultimate anti-capitalist practice. Among all the arts, it is one of the most difficult to fund because it yields no material thing that can be bought or sold. You know, dance lives in the dancers' bodies. It's stay. Thank you, Cody. Yeah, so it's literally impossible. Thank you, yeah. It's literally impossible to extract the dancing from the bodies that produce it and sell it. The choreography can be licensed, leased, reset, but it cannot be duplicated. Every remounting will be its own experience. So capitalism's core principle is the constant production of simulacra, which become entities in the market, and then the more you sell of it, the more its worth increases. But this cannot succeed in the field of dance, where the moment of realization of a dance is also its moment of disappearance and dissolution, right? Dance is, of course, part of our lives in many contexts and many ways, and here in the US, of course, we live in a capitalist system. And while it is vital that we value the particular labor of dance and equitable compensation, and therefore we must be thoughtful and innovative about the ways of generating income, there is a business model that we must be doubtful about. We should ask questions of. Because it stymies sustainable creativity. I want to mark dancing's core dis-ease inside a capitalist economy. In a context that is governed by a social contract that is about buying and selling, dancing offers experiences only. And that too, not a predictable, standardized experience, right? Because we take what we can, what our life allows us from a particular dance experience. It moves through our life. Dance moves through our lives by creating continuously dissolving experiences, investing in a process of making, remaking, and making again, without ever committing to an exact reproduction. And that is why dance is one of the most deeply spiritual practices for me, because we have to keep going at it again and again and again, and knowing that every time is going to be its own thing. And it offers us perhaps models by which to live our lives. The business model that I'm referring to, which is difficult for us, often imprisons artists, I think, inside what feels like a trading circuit. It keeps on repopulating the fields with people like curators and presenters who hold the utmost power to anoint artists, without having to answer back for their skills in making these assessments. Here, artists are often made to feel that they must literally leap up, engaging hugely virtuosic gestures and performative acts and rhetorical gymnastics in order to be noticed, programmed, and given their worth, right? Then there are agents who make their living off of marketing artistic labor, making artistic products, saleable, without necessarily understanding that a certain kind of quantification is often antithetical to the spiritual core of dance itself. Then there are hierarchical notions of technique and beauty and what constitutes professionalism and excellence. And all of this circulates within a capitalist structure which fosters exceptionalism models, suggesting that only the exceptional will survive in a crowded field. This creates a feeding frenzy in an under-resourced environment. The dance is already under-resourced. So this sort of competition, only one will survive, really does not serve us at all. It's not generative. This kind of thinking is not generative for artists who are working hard to create experiences of joy, beauty, liberation, and abundance, right? Like when you dance fully, you have to be abundant with your energy, and you keep on being abundant even though you're exhausted, because that's the job. That's dance. And as artists, we have to accept the charge of envisioning, embodying transformative moments for our audiences. We have to grapple with the juncture between imagination, innovation, and entrepreneurial thinking, and the resources that will support these shifts. I'm emboldened by the lessons of the uprising. I live in the Twin Cities, and the uprising that happened after the murder of George Floyd really changed our social structures in a huge way. And I'm grateful for the youth-led movement that made that possible. And the lessons of the uprising and projects such as creating new futures, and I keep hoping that the reset that I'm thinking about, that I'm dreaming about, is really happening. So let me uphold one of the primary statements from the Creating New Futures documents. Transformation is not aspirational. It is abolitionist work, leading with land back and reparations, disability justice, self-determination for peoples in the territories, and care of Black, Indigenous, trans, and people of color. This is how we become the death doulas of the systems that have not served, in order to recall the tools of liberation that have served peoples in the past and are essential to make new futures. So a shout out to the group of artists, thinkers, and arts professionals who came together to craft this document. They put this together during the pandemic. And it's on Tumblr, so you can look it up if you want. They inspire entrepreneurial thinking and creative problem solving, which is desperately needed for a field which has lost so many audiences fast due to the pandemic, which also fostered preference for screnic content. And what I have learned watching how large-scale movements for justice organized by young, marginalized communities have transformed the world in the last several years is this: recalibrating dance so that it becomes linked not just to a personal sense of freedom, but to collective liberation is magical and brilliant because it immediately invites different ways to reimagine our field. This recalibration is both necessary and it's possible. I can only speak of my own experience in this way. So in the process of thinking about this talk, I thought a lot about the choices I've made in my journey. Most of them were choices that were ones of elimination. This is not going to work, so no, not this. So not this, not that, but something else. So this is how I arrived at this journey of defining myself or describing my work as social justice choreography. So it's not, social justice choreography is not something that I was taught. In fact, I was not taught choreography. I grew up in India and trained in traditional dance forms. We were not taught at that time this notion of choreography. We learned by imbibing from our teachers the way they were teaching repertoire. I understood the principles by watching and learning from them. In fact, the first time I was taught choreography was when I went to graduate school here at Columbia University, and I realized that model was also not going to work for me, and that I was going to have to come up with something that would work for what the stories I wanted to tell or the kind of dances I wanted to make. And in fact, it is my commitment to social justice that taught me how to choreograph. It's not modular, it's not formulaic, but it's a kind of path making where, like Alice Shepard says, you're going to have to be willing to figure it out step by step. Most importantly, it's based on active listening to little heard voices, finding what indigenous leaders have called right alignment, and chiseling the craft of metaphoric movement. So one of the things I learned was, because I love ensemble choreography and because we have to tell stories with each other, I learned that I would have to make up for lighting design, for the sort of gaps in lighting design. When you have a company of a range of brown-skinned people, black and brown-skinned people, you realize that sometimes when you light one person, the other person is completely in shadow, or when you light the other person is completely overlit. Not a great model. So how do I work with placement? How do I work with costume color, staging, to make up for these, for these gaps? When will lighting, I can't wait, I don't have time to wait for lighting design to catch up to my vision of of these people who are dancing together, right? So how do I do that? It's this constant vigilance of that vision of a transformative world where we can all be seen in the same space, dancing together, though not the same, dancing together, that I have to be vigilant about all the time. So the tech process is really complicated, where I have to step in and out and look at things, look at every moment. Certain kind of lights create shadows on some people's face. And then in an expressive range of movement, those shadows mean that your story is not as seen as others. So it's really a lot of detailed feedback with collaborating artists that I have to engage in. So going back to movement aesthetic. So I was saying that I learned primarily traditional dance forms that were reorganized in the post-colonial era for the concert stage and are now called classical dance. That's a terrible name. I don't know what's classical, neoclassical, and what's not classical. The hierarchy is built into those titles. So I just call them traditional dance forms because they have a long history behind them. Anyway, I was studying those forms, and I was a part of a group that called themselves the radical humanists. And they produced choreographies that were about class struggle, primarily class struggle. And, we were performing in broken schoolhouses, we would have to take a train, take a bus, walk, 20 minutes to get to a stage inside rural and village areas, because that's where the audiences are. You're talking about class struggle. So it was, there was a lot of push and pull in the way that I felt like my body was being torn apart in two. Here was this traditional world with its pristine beauty, and here was the world of class struggle that was often happening at bus stops, in schoolhouses, sort of broken stages, like the wood would literally have a crack in it because we were going to impoverished communities. And really, it was this push and pull in my body that that invited me to say, no, I need to do both things. I need both the clarity and clear aesthetic understanding that was part of the traditional forms and the urgency that was part of the street theater dance forms that I was also part of. And that's what really birthed my entrepreneurial spirit and invited me to create a form called Yorcha, which some of you studied today. So the Odissi dance form, which was my primary training, is defined by strong rhythmic footwork and sculpturesque balances. To expand my expressive range, I sought out deeper training in Vinyasa Yoga, which gave me access to the extended lines of the body and huge manipulations of the spine. And I also sought out this martial art form called Chow, which was done at that time by people called men. It's done with a sword and a shield, but it's now done by everyone. But it strengthened my pelvic floor and gave me access to larger jumps and turns. And then I intersected the principles of those forms to create the form called Yorcha, which is the basis for my dance making. I've also spent some time organizing Yorcha, the pedagogy for Yorcha, and creating a sort of process of certification for it, inspired by Ms. Dunham's signature work in dance, so that artists who are trained in it have a way to support themselves as they teach after I'm gone. Entering dance through a different door. So for me, entering dance through a different door is about sharing the stories that I was drawn to and to offer embodied realizations of the model of transnational feminisms. That was my commitment. Now, for this, of course, you need ensemble choreography. And to make ensemble choreography, I needed to bring together a group of people and to train them and ensure that I could compensate them for their work. And I needed to organize the pedagogy and training system. And ultimately, these innovations led to the creation of the Shangram Institute. So this is the Shangram Institute. For Shangram in my language in Bengali means resistance or revolution. The Shangram Institute for Performance and Social Justice is in St. Paul on University Avenue, which is a main thoroughfare. It used to be a used car. And by the way, that's the newly launched logo of the company, which celebrates the different artists, the sort of different lineages of artists that are part of the company. Thank you. So this used to be a used car sales garage. And we were performing one time across the street from it. We were doing an all-night festival and at a school. So if this is the institute, right this way is the High School for Recording Arts, and right this way is another high school. And it's the right place for it. Right next to it, extended, is a Somali-run daycare, and right next to it, on the other side, is a Somali restaurant. So it's surrounded by community and youth and a lot of BIPOC communities. This is what it'll look like. Thank you, Cody. This is the inside, beginning construction. We started construction in 2018. Let's go. This is the inside of it. It looked pretty janky at that point. But here's what it looks like now at one of our community events. The light rail, you see this thing, the light rail, sorry. You see this is the light rail that runs right in front of it. And this is from across the street. Let's go for one more. This is inside on the opening day. So you see the artwork on the walls, that is all donated by artists in the community. And this is just at a workshop in the workshop event. One more. This is, so recently we've been leading these letter writing workshops for our friends in Palestine so they can so we don't see them as either these victims or in this dehumanized form. So we led these workshops to write letters to imagine what their lives were like on a daily basis. So this is part of that letter writing workshop, and we hung these letters up along our back door. Yeah. This is on one of the, this is the company as it was in 2019. And one more, innovating, improvising, an improvising workshop. And this is the company as it is now during a practice for a photo shoot. That's good. Okay. One of the things I am really proud of is that in last year, 2023, we were able to offer access to primary health care for our artists. This is not health insurance, which I want to, and I cannot afford yet. But, I keep on talking to my chiropractors in case there's a way in which we can get a discount package for all the artists, and then, an acupuncturist, just so that dancers can take care of the very thing that they depend on for their livelihood. But the access to primary health care is great because it's nice health care. It's a system where all the artists can have online access. Sometimes they do come and do x-rays if something is needed. So it's something I'm proud of. We also managed to, we got this big recognition which allowed us to put all of our artists on payroll so their taxes are taken care of. And we're not a huge company, we're tiny. So for us to be able to do that, it's just what happens when you put people first. As as some of the organizations say now, a budget is a moral document. So keeping that in mind. Okay. So, in order for dancing's embodied labor and justice-oriented approach to dancing to be honored, two things seem really vital. One is how to choreograph stories, right? When do you take what stories are important to you? How do you not take someone's story and tell it for them? How do you invite people into the process of story making? How is your imagination going to help you project towards a world in which we can all find our shared liberation because we need each other? And how do we engage with audiences? So if I could tell you the number of times, so I'm going to share just one story, but this is just an iconic story of the many times. There's this one gentleman who comes, we did this pre-performance thing one time, and he comes up to me and he says, I don't understand this social justice choreography. I'm only here because my daughter forced me to come. And I was like, okay, I had to speak to myself for a minute. Don't take it personal. It's okay. He was brought here by his daughter. And, it's easy at that, and I know we all have experiences like that, maybe. It's easy at that point to get really offended, and that's not where we need to go. What we need to remember is that the movement for justice needs everyone. And I have that one evening to invite this person in to the beauty, to see what a beautiful world, a just world is. So if I can make it irresistible, if we can all together make it irresistible, then he's going to be part of the movement. And then he's going to bring his cousin, who's not going to want to come, and they're going to bring their cousin. And, that's how I feel like some people will never join the movement. That's okay. We invite everyone nonetheless, because justice needs all of us. So the invitation has to be real, And you also have to watch for your own energy. That's also true, because sometimes people will be like, sometimes hate becomes a powerful force in the world out there, and it consumes us. So we have to be careful about that too. But that's part of what we have to negotiate. At any rate, this is why craft is so important. How you imagine, how you use metaphoric understanding to create these worlds, to conjure these worlds that are really just, beautiful, liberated, and hold so much possibility. The end seems to be to reveal the life force inside facts and figures, indicate the larger, the emotional life inside huge concepts such as genocide and war, provoke questions, carry audiences through a journey, move their hearts. And in order to do so, craft will have to be our be our sort of helper as we move people towards values. So great specificity and great specificity allows us great openness. In 2023, I created this work, which was a celebration of the uprising. So I'm going to show you a little section of it. I feel like, it allowed me to come from the depths of what was going on in the streets of the Twin Cities and reach out to global liberation movements across the world. And that was through collaboration with many, the scenic designer, the film designer, all of them. Also, at the same time, you'll see that I'll show just a little bit of the dance. It was done to a song called Halla Bol. Halla Bol means make noise. And this was in India, across South Asia actually. It's an anthem for protest and has been sung by generations of students to protest against institutions. Would you please play that for us? Thank you, Cody. The audiences were on stage. Can we get volume? Thank you. So I suggested that, dance making might in fact offer strategies to live our lives differently. I have found, and I say this with great humility and total sincerity, that this kind of work has to be born from the principle of love, radical love. And here is how Cornel West, the amazing thinker, talks about love. He says, quote, "On a larger scale, practicing radical love is what gives society our humanity. Bearing witness to justice is an act of love. Seeing the world through the lens of the most oppressed is radical love." End quote. Now, engaging with audiences is a notion of mutual beholding. I work hard. This is why I wanted you all to come forward, so thank you for that, because we have to be able to see each other. I work hard to invite in BIPOC and marginalized audiences into the work I'm sharing, because often they have not felt welcome in the theater houses I'm dancing in. These are theaters equipped with a sprung floor and high production values, because my work deserves all of the design support it needs, as it proposes new, just worlds. And all audiences deserve to experience this. So in order to invite in marginalized folks and general theater goers who might mistakenly think that a BIPOC femme company does not care about them, and the revolution needs everyone, what I need to do is to create as many avenues for my work as possible so people can engage in many different ways. So the performance is one among a series of things that happens. And I also do this thing called an audience empowerment workshop, which happened because I was working out with, my workout buddies at the Y. They're like, "Oh, I love the work. I don't understand it. Can you put up subtitles?" I was like, "No, come on." But it's because somehow we've convinced audiences that they have a distance from radical thinking. Of course they know how to, everyone has an imagination. We just imagine different things. So it began by inviting those folks, the folks with whom I lift weights, to come to the institute and be like, "Okay, what do you see?" "Oh, I see you all running around." "Okay, what would you do if you were running around?" Sort of really inviting them into understanding what it means to embody a concept, put it in their bodies. And so that, people have become, somehow, again, I'm going to blame our capitalist system. In order to survive, we've begun to think that dance needs to live only on the concert stage. And actually, it doesn't. It needs to live everywhere. Dancing along every day. There's actually I just saw this on Instagram, this woman in Edinburgh. She just became 60 and she started dancing on the street every morning. Love it, love it. Dancing as a part of everyday life. So important to the survival of the practice that we all love and care about, and to the survival of the field. So I do a lot of things. I do a lot of outside work. I do a lot of processionals where we process through the city, which it does not require a lot of movement, but invites people to bring in their own gestures and find a way to move their bodies in a metaphoric way. So it's, like we have to remind people that we all have access to imaginative movement, imagined gestures, not just, I picked up a pen and wrote my name kind of thing, gestures. All right. So here is one last thing. One of the things I find is I love to put my voice also inside the score. So, you have to be interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary as you imagine your worlds. This is from a work, from a section called Fire. Will we see this? That, by the way, is Spirit McIntyre, who is an amazing composer, non-binary artist from, I believe now they're in Baltimore. They were primarily a cellist and vocalist, and they ended up performing in this piece because they appreciated the stories that we were trying to tell together. We made it up. So here is my last two. Thank you. And here I am. Here are my last two offerings for you. Performance, my friends, is an act of generosity. I have done my best to be entrepreneurial and innovative in order to create ways that invite in diverse audiences into the work. And I've been able to slowly build audiences that return to the theater every year. Next year will be the 20th year of my company. And I'm excited about it. I want to end with a call from a poet who has been really influential for me. This is Sonia Sanchez, who was one of the leading voices in the Black Arts movements. How many of you have heard of the Black Arts movement? Thank you. Please look it up. It's amazing, and Sonia Sanchez is brilliant. Here is Sonia Sanchez. And they followed us in their cars with their computers, and their tongues crawled with caterpillars, and they bumped us off the road, turned over our cars, and they bombed our buildings, killed our babies, and they shot our doctors, maintaining our bodies. And their courts changed into confessionals. But we kept on organizing, we kept on teaching, believing, loving, doing what was holy, moving to a higher ground, even though our hands were full of slaughtered teeth. But we held out our eyes, delirious with gaze. We held out our eyes, delirious with grace. And I'll end with one more statement, and this is by Bell Hooks, amazing Black feminist of our times, who reminds us that radical love leads to the collective transformation of society. What makes love so radical is its intervention in a struggle beyond one's own. So this is why I also bring the lesson of transnational feminism and transnational solidarity. Feminism is not the story of people called women or femmes. Feminism is a way of looking from the ground up, so we can look at the possibility of transformation and empowerment, differentiate empowerment from power. Transnational, because we live in a world, I mean, when you hear those words, are there not places across the world that could be set in right now, or that could be set off? This is the experience of so many people. So how do we hold on to our families across the world as we dance? This is my meditation, and this is the source of any entrepreneurial events, engagements that I have been part of. I would love to engage in a conversation with you so I know how things landed. And don't all speak at the same time?
Thank you so much, Ananya. So, yeah.
Thank you.
I have a microphone in my hand, and if you would like to put forth a question or share a comment, just put your hand up and I will come to you. We'll take a moment to let you collect yourselves. Okay.
So one thing that I kind of noted was when you were talking about how the traditional styles didn't really work with you, and then also the versus the classic struggle, that side of it, was it ever discouraging to try, were you ever frustrated oh, why isn't this working, before you got to the point of let me make it my own?
Oh yeah, a lot of struggles with my teachers also. So one day, one of my, the elder gurus, one of my teacher's teacher was choreographing this work about divine love. And one of the main artists was really, especially that day in rehearsal, was struggling with her own experience of domestic violence. And I was like, come on, how is she going to dance about divine love when she's experiencing its failure in her own life? And this teacher, who was highly respected, said, well, in classical dance, we only dance about the ideal world. And, that was, for me, that was such a moment, I felt an electric shock go down my body. I don't want to dance about the ideal. I also don't want to necessarily talk about the real, because, I want to talk about a journey towards somewhere else. It took a long time, and I will say that the struggle continues because people see this and they're like, oh, that's there's an immediate, the tradition you bring. I was like, but I'm not a traditional dance maker. I'm a contemporary dance maker. And people will say to me so often that they associate me with a certain kind of form. Just because I do footwork doesn't make me a traditional dancer. So I'm constantly frustrated by it and constantly asking my Libra self to be a little more balanced with that. Yeah.
We've got two folks here. All right, I'm going to hand you the mic. You can handle it.
Yes. As you were saying that you create social justice work, we are bringing in Michael Utoff, who is teaching us Murmurs of a Stream, and he describes his work as not a raise your fist kind of piece. It's more of a like liberation, like a happy dance. Would you say that you create pieces that are more like heavy and raise your fist than what Michael creates?
There's room for everything, you know.
Yeah.
I feel, I don't know, perhaps because I am a femme presenting person, you know, my experience has been that my access to beauty and powerful dance has been a journey. So I generally find the arc. I don't always, you know, I can't quite. Happiness has a journey. Like for us to get to that point, we have to work through something. So that's what I do. I begin somewhere and go somewhere. It's not always like, oh God, you know. But the truth of the lives of BIPOC femmes is hard. I can't deny that. So I begin where I'm at, you know, and then go somewhere.
Thank you, Ananya. We are going to have to conclude this session so we can get ready for our next speaker. Thank you so much for coming to Kent State and sharing your work with us. Thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful afternoon.